This is going to be a quick little video on how to set up and use the actual map editor that is provided in both a standalone plugin as well as the Ultimate First Person Template plugin as well. So this video is going to cover both of them. However, I'm just going to be using the first person or the Ultimate FPS template as the showcase on like how to do this, because the setup and usage is the exact same, because ultimately they are the exact same plugin, just one's included in the Ultimate FPS template project or plugin. So to begin, what you have to do upon the initial setup is one thing. If we head over to the map editor and we look at the map editor character, the example that is provided. Now you can use your own character for this. I just provide an example one that only contains a capsule and a camera, nothing more. It includes my own character movement component. Now this one here is optional. It is just meant to aid in actual doing map editor like things. So for example, we look at the character movement component, and specifically we have some extra functions. So one, we simplify the movements if you wish to use them through Blueprint. So you just simply call move forward, move right, move up, turn, look up, and all that kind of stuff. That is all just handled for you. Now move up is done a little bit, that is a new one. So for example, when you press Q and E in this case, you move both up and down. So that's just to aid in the whole flying thing, to match how you would move around inside of Unreal Engine. Next up, you see here we have enter movement mode. So movement mode is for things, well, when you want to enter movement. So for example, I can't move, but I can click on stuff right now. But if I hold right mouse button, my cursor disappears, I can turn, and I can fly around. That is the exact same setup as, well, again, Unreal Engine. So when I'm in movement mode, like I am right now, I can look around, I can fly. When I let go of my right mouse button, I can go through and select things. So that allows me to actually manipulate objects. So again, it's just for helpers like that. So then we have the actual map editor handler. So this is a actor component. So you would just add this to your character, and from there, we want to set the trace collision channel. So I set up, and I would prefer you to do this as well, a dedicated trace channel for this. So to do that, what you do is you go to Settings, Project Settings, and of course that loads up over here. If we come down to Collision under Engine, you will see we have Object Channels and Trace Channels. What you do is just add a new trace, give it a name, and you're going to want to set the default response to Ignore. Once you do that, go back to the map editor, click the map editor handler, and make sure the trace collision channel is set to the new trace channel you just made. After that, this should already be set, I believe, depending on if you're using this character or not, but set the Gizmo class to be the BP_map editor Gizmo. Next up, let's look at the map editor Gizmo. So this obviously is your scale, your rotation, and your location all kind of set up into its own thing. Now, one thing you want to make sure on, if we click on, for example, this Z-axis, so that would be this guy right here, just strictly the Z, and we go down to collision, we want to make sure of a couple things. One, we want to make sure our new collision channel, our new trace channel that we just made, make sure you set that to block. So you want to make sure all of these have map editor or your trace channel, depending on what you named it, set to block. That is what allows it to know that your mouse hit, the gizmo. So for example, if you want to hit a normal mesh, you don't want it to block. The blocking is strictly, again, for gizmos. So how do you set up a new object to be added? So for example, I'm going to actually delete this barrel, and I will take out the barrel from it. Let me actually save this really quick, so that way we can add a new item. So I want to get rid of that really quick. Alrighty, so I just removed the barrel. So now when I look through the item spawner, we no longer have a barrel. So let's go ahead and set that up. So you go ahead, you go through, you import your mesh and all that. Once you've done that, you can, or if you just want to use an existing actor, you can do so. So in my case, I'm just going to really quickly create a new actor, and I'm going to name it BP_barrel. Open that on up. We want to add, in our case, because we're using a static mesh for the barrel, I'm going to add a static mesh and make that the root, and then just simply add the barrel. So this can, again, be any actors that you have already existing. The only thing you have to set up is the root component or whatever you're using for collision to have something set specifically. So in my case, I set the barrel. So the static mesh is my root. So this is my collision. This barrel here is my collision. So I scroll down to collision. As you can see by default, we're set to block all dynamic. My map editor is set to ignore. We need to change this to overlap, and that's it. So I'm going to change this from block all dynamic to custom and just simply set map editor to overlap. Okay. Now that that's done, we can do a quick test. I'll just drag the barrel into the scene and I'll click on it. And as you can see, the gizmo comes up and I'm allowed to manipulate it like so. Now, for example, if I select this wall, nothing happens. If I select this, here, I'll just use this target specifically right here as an example. So I'm clicking on it and nothing happens. Now, if I click on it here, I go to the static mesh, go down to collision, and I set map editor to overlap. Now when I click on it, all right, nothing happens. So I'm going to have to actually, I guess, tab, or yeah, I'm going to have to go through and manually set the map editor. So we're going to set it to overlap. And basically what that allows you to do is just click on it. But this is not set up to do that, but that's literally all you have to do. So you can set that up for any other actor that you may have. So next up, how do we actually add it so we can spawn it? So when I press Y to go into the editor and hit open item spawner, how do we make it appear here? Well, that is all data table driven. So if we go to the map editor, assets, UI, and then we'll find our data table. So we open up the data table and we can add a new entry. And we're going to call this one barrel for the item name. Then we want to pass in the class, which again is our BP underscore barrel class. Then we can pass in a thumbnail if we have one. In my case, I have T underscore barrel, which is the thumbnail. I simply save. And now I have a barrel here as an option to spawn. So I can click it, it'll spawn it, and I can go through and manipulate it however I need to. And we're good to go. All right, so that pretty much sums it up. Oh yes, one more thing I forgot. In order to manipulate the items, you also have to make sure that your actor is set to be movable. So for example, we're here at this IPSC target where I set the collision to overlap for the map editor. I also have to set it to movable. That gives us the ability to go into it and then click on it. And now we can actually manipulate it however we need. So that's how you would end up setting that up. So you can do these for any of your map objects that are live and go from there if you wish to. So I'm going to go ahead and revert that back really quick. Now, as far as multiplayer goes, let's go ahead and test this barrel really quick. So I'm going to go and play with 2 players and I'm going to do them as clients. So this client, I'll just look at the barrel. And this guy, I'll go into the map editor. So if I move this guy around, as you can see, it is not replicating. So one thing you want to also be sure of if you want to use this for multiplayer is, let's go to our barrel. We want to make sure that we have our actor set to replicate. And same thing goes, if we are going to be having our server perform movements, we need to make sure that it replicates movement as well. So to give you an example, I will again play with 2 clients. Oops. Let's try this out. So I move it, and as you can see, client 1 can move it. However, client 2 does not see the barrel being moved. But if I play as a listen server and with a client, and then I move it, as you can see, the barrel moves. So the way to resolve that is because you want the server to be able to replicate the movement down, so you want to also check replicate movement. Now you can set up your own actors to toggle these based upon what you're doing. So for example, if you don't want it to replicate at a specific time, you make sure you set that and all that fun stuff. But you want to make sure you have both of those set. So now when we play with 2 clients, we will have replicated movement. Whoops. Just like, oops, if I can actually click it, just like so. So everything is replicated. Now you see how it's stuttery here on the client? That is based upon another setting that you can also set. So let's go over to some of the controls that you have over it. If we load up our character here, we go to the map editor handler, we have the replication rate. So this is basically how you control how often you will replicate, well, everywhere. So this controls when you're moving an object up and down, how often is this going to replicate to other clients. So if I set this to something like, we'll do 5. So we have 5 seconds for it to actually replicate. Go ahead and play as a listen server. And on the client here, I'm going to move it up. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5. There, our barrel just moved. And same thing goes, it already replicates as well when we let go of it. So I'm going to snap it to the ground and then let go. So I'll drag it down and let go. Drag it up, let go. So upon release, it is also set. So if you want this to only replicate when released, what you can do is set this to a super high value. And basically the lower this value is, the more often and the smoother it will be. So if I set it to something absurdly small, like 0.01, granted in higher, what's the word? In higher ping scenarios, this is not going to be perfect. But here it is with a lower replication rate. Or technically, I guess, a faster replication rate. As you can see, the movement, or the updating, is a lot faster. So that's how you control all of that. So I recommend leaving this, depending on how many players you have, at a value of at least 0.1. Okay, so that covers all of that. Let me think really quick if there's anything else. All right, let's move on to the UI. So what some of these things do and allow you to do. So back in the viewport here, obviously the item spawner allows you to open the items. Here we have location and rotation snapping. So for example, I have this set to 5. So if I drag up, you can see it goes up. I drag 2 by accident. If I go up, it increases by 5. And you can also adjust based upon these individual values. So I can reset it back down to 0, and you can see it snaps down. And if I go to something like 50, it snaps up, and so on and so on. Same thing goes, so this corresponds to what gizmo you're using. So if I press E to go into rotation, you can see I can now adjust the yaw, roll, and pitch. If I press R to go to scale, I can now adjust the scale for the X, Y, and Z axis, and then back to location for the X, Y, and Z axis. You can adjust the snapping rate. So if I change location snapping to something like 50, I can click on it and snap it up. As you can see, it snaps in increments of 50. And again, same thing goes for rotation. If you want there to be none, you would just set this to 0. And as you can see, when I move it up, there is no snapping, nothing like that. And there also is an undo function. So if I press T, I have the ability to undo all of my changes. Next up, we have the map saver and loader. So again, this is all kind of built as a framework. So the UI is meant to be overhauled by you, and it is set up to be very easily, well, used. So here I just have my example. Here we have the map loader. I have an example map already. So this is that map directory that was also in the handler. So the map editor handler, you see the map directly is set to maps. If I go to maps, you will see here I have 2 of them. So one is called example map, and the other one is called map 1. So map 1 is on the shooting range map, and example map is on the shoot house day. So shoot house day is the map that we are on currently. So the way the loading of the map works is, if you look here, you see we have the map name before the actual map itself. So for example, shoot house day and shooting range. So it will only load the maps that you have on the actual level that you are on. So since I'm on shoot house day, I'm only going to see example map. So I can load that up, and I can hit load, and it loads up the extra actors and all that kind of stuff that I have set. So moving on to the other example here. So for example, if I go to the shooting range, then let's go to maps, shooting range. I'll go ahead and save. Then I hit play, and then go to the map loader. I can now only select map 1. So I select it, hit load map, and I don't even think I saved anything here, but That's how that sets that up. So it's independent, or it's dependent on which map you're on. So you can't, for example, mess something up by loading it on a different map other than the one that the map was created on. So the way also loading of the map works is you must be the server to load up a map. So that's just kind of there as a safety by default. So let's say we have 3 people. Player 1 is the host, player 2 and 3 are the connected clients. Player 2 and 3 can save the map all they want, so everyone can make changes to the map and they can both save their own copy if they wish. Or again, you could just simply upload the SK map file and they can download it, and that's all that really requires as well. However, when they go to the map loader, only the server is able to actually hit load map and load the changes. So that's the only way that that will end up working. So now let's go to saving maps. It is very simple to save a map. So I'm just going to leave it as a test map 2. That'll be the name. I will take the barrel, I will move it up, and I will spawn an IPSC target, and I'll do the same thing again. I'll just spawn, a net up here. So I'm going to hit save map. And now we have Shoot House Day test map 2. So the same name that we just created, or named it right there. So now I'm going to go ahead and close it down and go back into the game. And when I hit load map under the test map 2, as you can see, here we have our new, the net. We have our IPSC target, and we still have our barrel. So that's how all that works. So you can see a list of these static functions here. Let me go ahead and head back to the character. So if we right click and head over to map editor, or did I leave this under here? No. So map editor, we have several sections. We have spawning, so for spawning the actor, serializing, so we can serialize the whole level and we'll return a string, and we can deserialize it, which will turn a structure that we can then use to spawn. So we can spawn based upon strings or structures, as I will show you in a minute. For the selected actor, we can get the name, transforms, and set the transforms for it. For selection, we have grabbing, performing mouse traces to see, what is behind the mouse. We can release actors, and we can set actors. For the map, we have clear map, spawn map items, and spawn map items from JSON. So spawn map items takes in a custom data structure, so map items that this is what it serializes and deserializes into, so this structure. So you can spawn them in that way as well, or just using the JSON string that ends up being loaded in with it. So we have a basic init function. This is a lot of stuff for handling the possession. So for example, going to and from the map editor character, as you can see that I was just doing. So for example, when I play, I can press Y, I'm in the map editor character, press Y again, I'm now repossessing the original pawn. So it's set up to kind of aid in that sort of thing. So then we have the gizmo, so we can get the gizmo type, so rotation, location, and scale. We can see basically change to which one we want to see. So we can show movement, we can show only the rotation, or just the scale gizmo. For file handling, we can check whether or not a map exists. We can get all the maps that correspond to our current level. We can get the real map name, so this basically just crops it out and will return us the actual name, such as test map 2, map 1, and example map. And then we have, let me bring it back. We have loading map from the file, so that will load it up into JSON format, which we can then pass into this spawn map items from JSON, or we can pass it into the serialized level and then pass that result into spawn map items. It's up to you. We also have removing the extension, so remove.sk map, and we have the ability to save the map to a file, which, as you saw, was how, we obviously save a map to a file. Then on editing, so this is for editing actors, we have delete actor, delete select or deselect actors. We can get the replication rate, we can get and set the snap amounts, and we have the undo function. So basically any change we make. So I'll grab this barrel, drag it up left, I can press T and undo. So again, undoing is also replicated. So that pretty much sums everything up. I do have an example of possession and repossession right here. It's set up very simply. That's all you need to really do. And yeah, that sums up the map editor. So again, this is for both the first-person shooter plugin, or the Ultimate FPS template plugin, as well as the dedicated map editor plugin. Both of these will be linked in the description below. If you do not see the map editor plugin down there, it's because it is not approved yet. I'm still waiting on approval. So I'll see you in the next video.